Hello! In here is the new version of the BetaFPV Meteor 75. What's new about it? Well, the previous version definitely had an external VTX and it might have had an SPI receiver. This new one uses the 5-in-1 controller. So within the flight controller you have the flight controller, you have the OSD, you have the receiver, you have the ELRS receiver and the VTX. I think, did I get them 5? I think so. I actually reviewed the old version of the BetaFPV 75 and much what I say would be basically saying that again. Look here to see the original review. I talked about it being an excellent beginner's quad. I thought I might lean more into that and show you exactly how I'm going to set things up to make it much more beginner friendly. This is what it looks like. I couldn't find my old one, I might have given it away. And I say this is much more beginner friendly, it's much more solid on these bits. If you look at stuff like the Air 75, which I really enjoyed flying, but is much flimsier and you've got much less to do with the camera angle, that's pretty much set there. With this one you do have in here little bits and pieces to set the camera angle lower. If you look at how all the components are actually attached here, you could completely change the frame, and spare frames are pretty inexpensive, and you wouldn't have to do a single piece of soldering. Unlike stuff like the Air 65, if you saw that video, I had a problem with the accelerometer, which wasn't working after crashing, it would roll over. I've got the new board to do that, and I have to solder all the motors in. The technical word for this is teeny tiny, and you really prefer not to solder things that small if I could help it, but there you go. So yeah, I'm gonna basically get on this, install what I think is much more beginner friendly camera angle. This is not up high, about 25 degrees, but high enough that it will become problematic around the house. And I'm going to talk about how I'm setting the throttle up to make it easier to cope with going slowly around the house in very tight spaces. And then of course if you want to fly outside you can open up a little bit more and do stuff. This still comes with a USB cable, the different bits as I mentioned for doing the camera angle, some spare props, a screwdriver, and you get 2 batteries with it. One in here with this little battery charger and one already there. As I said last time, do yourself a favour, buy yourself a couple of boxes of these. Basically, this is a box of 4 of these batteries. They're pretty good batteries. They give you about 4 minutes depending how you're flying. So you want to get a whole bunch of them and have the most fun you can in one sitting without waiting for them to charge again. Okay, so let's get into this. Let's see if we can change the camera angle, and just for the hell of it, I might change the frame over to see if there's anything fiddly about it. So I just started taking this apart because I thought let's put it in the orange frame to see if there was any problematic things, and there's not. I've unplugged the motors, I've unplugged the camera. The only thing to be careful of is not losing these little rubber things. These basically help the board float, and I'm gonna guess there's one above, maybe there's one underneath, don't know, I'll have a quick look see. That's actually much more friendlier than I thought. They've actually got these going through them. It used to be like one above, one below, and it was easy to lose. This looks like a doddle to move over. Literally just pick it up, plonk it on that one. That screw goes in first. The other 3 screws go on when you put the canopy on, but I'm gonna see if I can change this angle first. So this is the camera mount, and there's just a couple of little screws to get this out. And what happens basically, that lean will be having that flat. So there's not much in it, but what you've got to do is just look at these. Oops, get around the right way would help. And just examine how much angle that would have. And that looks more like sort of 15 degrees maybe. But this one definitely seems more aggressive. So I'm going to try and swap those out now, see what we get. Okay, that's the lowest angle we got, I think. Doesn't look a lot in it, but we'll see what happens when we fly it. Let's get these motors plugged in and stuff next. I don't think I've changed any of these motors before, and they've got this triangular pattern which is very easy to line up inside one of those and get the screws in. Obviously things this little are fiddly, but fiddly just requires patience, there's no skill. In that bag of stuff you've got these extra things that fit in there, but I'm really not sure what they are and I'm not a particular fan. But anyway, we did the whole frame swap in about 15 minutes, taking it easy. I don't think it's something you'd want to do on the field or something you'd try and do in 5 minutes, just because the nature of very small things is they take a little while. But as I said, no soldering, all swapped over, so let's get it set up to fly. Now I've just gone ahead and attached that to USB via the adapter there, and I've got this fan running, just a USB test fan, because
even at USB power, this will power up the VTX on this little quad, and that can really get quite hot if left alone, so best to cool it. And what I'm doing is I'm waiting for the Express LRS receiver to go into a rapid flashing site, which means I can connect to it via Wi-Fi, put my passphrase in, and then, you know, I'm bound. That's my way of binding. I find it the most easiest way to do things. Okay, you'll see this very rapid flash now, which means it's in access point mode. So if I go over on my computer, I should have an Express LRS RX access point. The password for this is, I think, Express LRS. I've logged into it lots of times before, so it will just come up. And what you just need to do is pop your binding phrase in here, which could be secret, and then you'd go ahead and click save, and then you'll have that assigned to your radio like this one, and I should just be able to use it. So I'll go ahead and put in my actual phrase, which by the way isn't secret. So I'm going to save this, and then I'm going to go ahead and reboot this, and my radio is on, so what I'm hoping is we should get telemetry recovered or something along those lines. Well, I kind of expected my radio to tell me something, but it hasn't, so I'm going to go ahead and go into Betaflight, and then I'm going to go over to the receiver tab, and then if I wiggle my sticks, yeah, we're all connected and we can get this set up now. Now, I'm not going to say this is the way to set things up. This is the way I set things up. I don't like air mode being on all the time. I like to have it as a switch, so that's one thing I turn off. Well, that's why the radio didn't tell me there was telemetry, is because that needs to be ticked. So yeah, I have that one. I think most people would have that one on. If you've got telemetry, you may as well use it, and can be quite handy for finding things as well. So part of my not wanting air mode is to not spin my motors when I arm it. I find that's quite useful for the way I land, rather than just having to reach for a switch. If I just land it, it works a lot better. Now, the crucial part of sort of the flying indoors thing is getting a profile that works for indoors and a profile that works for outdoors. As it is here, this is kind of a middle road scenario, but there's no throttle limit on. So what you can do with the throttle limit, you can say, I want a scaling throttle limit, which means it will use the whole stick but scale it down. And on this, I think, I'll test it out, but we'll do 50%. So basically our entire range of the throttle all the way to the top will be basically 50% worth of the throttle, which should be plenty for doing this. And we'll call this indoors, because they're very easy, or inside. They're very easy to save with things, and I might even change the max rate to something a little bit lower. Normally I fly in something like 1000 degrees a second, but let's try and make this much more friendly. So I'm going to set this down to 500, so half as much as I would normally use, and I'm going to put an expo of 20 on each of them. Basically, this means if you just like wiggle your sticks right in the center, then they won't really have much of an effect until you really start moving them out. So less sensitive in the middle, more sensitive on the outside. So let's save that one, and then I'll go to rate profile 2, and I'm going to call that outside. And with this, we're going to have the throttle limit off, and I'll keep that rate for now, and we'll see what happens. The only other thing really I want to see here is the OSD. They've come in and they've done like a bunch of stuff, not really everything I want there. So I'm going to set this up, and I'm going to talk about why I've added these things. Okay, this is kind of my standard setup for an OSD. Up the top here, I want to know what channel I'm on for VTX and what power. This is my Express LRS transmitter. I want to know what power that's on. I have my name here. Historically, when I used to fly with friends, occasionally we'd get stuck on the same channel, and one would think he's flying the other person's quad when it wasn't. Basically, if somebody sees that in their display, they know it's not them. Then I've got my LQ and my DBM for my receiver, so I know how good my signal is all the time. But my warning message is in the middle because I want to see those flash up. Down the bottom we have voltage and throttle position, Normally I might put like average cell voltage, but when we're dealing with one cell we don't need to think about it. My mode I'm flying in and how many minutes I've been flying. Of course, it's very personal. If you want, you know, crosshairs or whatever, go ahead and stick them in, or put things in where you like them. But that's how I like things. Before you fly though, power on your model, get your goggles on, and make sure that these do line up with the ends. Sometimes what is on screen here will be off screen on your goggles, and vice versa. Sometimes you might have a little bit more space to play with, so always check that first. Modes wise, this is what we have by default, and I've just got a few changes to make here. Okay, very small change. What I've done, I've moved angle and horizon over, so my first and default mode would be acro. There's not a mode for acro, it's just if you're not in angle or you're not in horizon, that's acro. That's on my mode switch here, so we're in acro or angle or horizon. Arm switch is obvious. Beeper I put on a little momentary switch, so you don't want it going off all the time. Because I chose to have air mode on a switch, that's air mode there, and total mode there. And that's good for my modes. Time to try flying it. Okay, so we've charged up a battery. I'm going to up the power. Might as well do it to max since we're going to go through walls and stuff. And I also just want to check I'm on my right profile. So you see rate profile, that's inside. So that's what we're after. Right then, so I'm going to put it into angle. I'm going to arm it. And let's see how this flies. We can tell the camera's down because we can see the ducks, and you can see I'm having to put quite a bit of throttle in here, but what that gives me is just loads of range to manage it. And the most difficult section you'll probably get in your house is coming down the stairs. If that camera's pointed upwards, it can be quite tricksy. So we're through that okay. It's getting a very orange tinge off these ducks, isn't it? It's also quite dark out there today. It's raining and miserable, and so we've got all sorts of different lighting conditions. But what I'm having here is a very, very easy time navigating my way around. It feels quite sedate, but look, it's very, very easy to fly fast. You just put the nose down and put the throttle up. Getting, you know, proper control and stuff is a little bit different, and learning how to fly slowly and smoothly means you'll find it very easy to speed up later. So I use this kind of, I call it an explorer quad. I try and see if I can get in all the little nooks and crannies that look difficult to get into. Let's have a quick mirror selfie. There I am. About this camera, it's really lighting up the orange hues of my house here. But yeah, I'm very satisfied that this is the right config for indoors. See, I'm going nice, slow. I can absolutely control everything. I can get through little gaps. Here's a nice little gap, look, on the washing thing. Oops, caught a bit of it there, but got through. These are quite good at bouncing off things. What you will have to do is give this quite a lot of stick. So 50% might be too low for some people, but you can mess around with your throttle percentage very easily. It's just a case of putting it up or down a few little percent and see how it feels to you. And this feels really good for creeping around inside the house, doing things like landing on the cat post. Don't know if that's suggested. I don't know how much fur I've picked up there. Like there's enough to make a whole new cat just up there. And get under this chair leg. Oh hello, that's not tidying up, is it? Just shoving stuff under there. Well, I'm porpoising a little bit with this setting, so it might be the fact that I could put it down to maybe 45% instead of 50. But you know, we're still doing okay. And you know, you're not limiting yourself to flying super slowly. You can still fly faster with this, because inside the house, of course, fast means a different thing. It's like anything beyond about walking pace is going to feel really quick. But you see, we can get around these corners. Put the Put the pedal down a little bit and turn. Yeah, you don't need to have your camera up to do this. So for me, this is the great definition of a beginner quad. And hello Rosh, a beginner whoop in this case. Yeah, the camera's coming off a bit orange, where there's red hues, they really sort of glow. But it's going to be better in natural light. Definitely a bit dodging this artificial stuff. See here, I can just go just around myself. God, I've got a pile of stuff to sort out there. And get up very close and personal with myself without feeling like I'm going to do any damage. Let's do one more quick lap and then we're good. Oops, hit the stairs a little bit. Let's do it corner. Let's go right this time. Look in the sink, turn it round, over the walk, into the lounge, spin around there, into the conservatory. Maybe go under the clothes. Whoops. Maybe go under the clothes dryer. Sort of cheated in the end. Yeah. Let's see, flying this sort of pace, going to get 5 minutes out of it fairly easy. Still do a little bit more here. So just come and land at my toes. Yeah, pretty good I think.
So I thought about going through an outside setup, and then I realised my outside flying area is not particularly suitable for beginners. You shouldn't really fly in the woods unless you're fairly confident about not crashing or recovering if crashing. So this is the previous Meteor 75, and obviously I've got a slightly higher angle of the camera, and my quad is set up to let me do a bit of acro, and this is the beauty of this quad as a beginner. You can have it flying very slowly, and then as you grow in confidence and experience, you can get up to, you know, fairly nice little flying quad where you can do acro, you can fly around a lot faster, and it will last you. So it's not just a quad for beginners, it's a great fun quad to fly proximity round things like this. The other reason why I don't want to do some outside flying is because this video is already going to be close to 20 minutes long, and I didn't want to make a really long video where I'm trying to just explain the basics, so I'll leave it here for now. Well, there you go. That is the BetaFPV Meteor 75 in the interesting orange colour. I think that camera's just oversaturating, so when it's got a strong red it sort of glows a little bit. Not so much a problem outside, but it's certainly interesting flying around and seeing glowing things in the house. So that is my sort of basic beginner setup. If you're a beginner and you watch this, did I miss anything? I tried not to go for everything. For example, the setup on the radio is a whole new thing and stuff like that. But if you think I've missed stuff out, let me know and I will try and follow up with something else. Many thanks to BetaFPV that sent this over for review, and of course you'll find links down below if you want to check one out for yourself. Hope that review's been helpful, and I'll see you next one. Bye for now. Well, you've made it to the end of the video, so thanks once again for watching. If you like what you saw, then please consider subscribing, and if you really like what you saw, then be sure to check out the link to my blog for a variety of ways in which you can help support this channel.